everyone. Officially welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started with today's event, today's session. As you know, we are focused this month on men's health. This is Men's Health Awareness Month. And so this is our second session for Absol-Delicious Eat Well for Better Health. Thank you for joining us today. We have a great session planned for you. Our topic is on brain health. And we have wonderful guest speakers and guest chefs with us. Just for anyone who may be new, we do have our founder and executive directors with us today, Ms. Dale Kane. She's the brains behind these programs, and we're happy to have her with us as well, just so you know who she is and what she looks like. This is Dale Kane. Just to give you everyone a little bit of background as we move forward with today's presentation, Advocates for Community Wellness is a nonprofit organization. We're 501c3, which was founded in 2003. We're faith-based, non-denominational. We consider ourselves a holistic health promotion and nutrition education ministry without walls. We bring wellness programs to you where you live, work, learn, shop, play, and worship. Our focus is on educating and promoting health, nutrition, healthy cooking classes, and wellness programs for teaching the relationship between diet, health, and chronic diseases. So for Absol-Delicious in particular, this is one of our main programs. Our mission is improving eating habits for healthier lifestyle, increase longevity, and quality of life. We have three main goals. One is to increase consumption of vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. Two is to encourage a more nutrient-rich diet plan for better health, and to reduce risk factors of chronic diseases and illnesses. And then the third goal is to obtain a healthier weight through consumption of plant-based nutrition. So as a faith-based organization, we do like to start off with our biblical reference. So for today, we're coming from 2 Timothy 1:7, which is, we're gonna look at this from the New King James Version of the Bible. And it simply says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." We like to take these scriptures and apply them to our lives, particularly in the context of our event. We want to look at it in the context of our health. So do not have a spirit of fear, but one of power, love, and a sound mind. So to be confident in believing in having good health and using nutrition, what God has provided to us for that purpose. Okay, so I just want to officially introduce myself to anyone who's new or haven't been here in a while. My name is Sharia Moore Houston. I am today's moderator. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for Advocates for Community Wellness. I've been with the organization since February of this year. I have 20 years of experience in the nonprofit sector. Formerly, I was a development manager, mostly an office administrator. I've worked with a number of different aspects of nonprofit, which would include special and annual events, which is often tied to fundraising, self-taught and graphic design, volunteer coordination, human resources, and office mentoring. So a lot of different experience in the nonprofit world. I have a master's in nonprofit administration from North Park University, along with 3 relevant certificates. And as we get started, also we want to give you a disclaimer, our waiver and consent. The information that we provide to you today is for educational purposes only. So it's not intended to replace the information or advice that you'll get from your medical doctor or any other healthcare professional whom you regularly consult. So our presenters are going to be giving us information based on their credentials as they go throughout this course. Now, in terms of the recipes, if you choose to go ahead and cook those, you do want to keep in mind whether or not you need to modify the recipes based on the ingredients and whether or not you have any particular allergens. So keep, of course, take notice of those particular recipes to see if you need to modify them. Also, all of our Zoom sessions are recorded. So you feel free at your discretion to turn your video or audio on or off at any time. So today our topic and learning objectives, well, just for the series, we're dealing with heart health, brain health, and cancer. Today we're focusing on brain health. Now we do have a guest speaker who we're going to introduce shortly. So we are going to be on just for maybe 10 minutes longer, just for the sake of having our speaker today. And today's guest speaker is Dr. Christopher Howard. We will allow him to introduce himself. He is our Director of Mental Health Awareness and Education. So Dr. Howard, if you want to come on, go ahead and introduce yourself.
First and foremost, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me. I always look forward to these just community events. I mean, it gives me an opportunity to really give back to the community that's given so much to me and find a way just to promote mental health, particularly brain health. Um, I am a doctor. I'm a neuropsychologist. And one of the things with neuropsychology is that we study brain behavior relationships. And unfortunately, one of the things in the field is that a lot of times African Americans, particularly African American men, are just kind of forgotten about. So one of the things I would like to do is just kind of advocate for us and just raise awareness. I guess my interests are cognitive aging, health disparities, and African Americans. All right. I really want to take advantage of this men's health because I think one of the things that you kind of find, like just as you comb through the data, is that like a lot of times African Americans, but particularly African American men, always have the worst health outcomes, whether it's cardiovascular disease, whether it's Alzheimer's. And sometimes the unique thing is that we don't know specifically because African Americans, like we pass away so quickly that it's hard to determine like everything there is to know about Alzheimer's with African American men because we pass away. Our We tend to live to be around 68 years old, 69, 70. And one of the things about length of life that I want you guys to kind of think about is that sometimes it's not about the length, but it's about the quality. So even if we pass away at 68, 69, 70, that sometimes it's a struggle to the end, right? So one of the things that we want to do today is just kind of address what is Black men and brain health? How can we improve it? All right. Okay. So one of the things I want to talk about is the symptoms of stress. So stress is omnipresent, right? We always talk about stress this or stress that though. But one of the things I would really want to do is that I just want to like really identify like what is this thing? So stress is how we react when we feel under pressure or threatened. It usually happens when we're in a situation that we don't feel we can manage or that we can control. So I don't think it's too difficult or too challenging to think of any situations where we've developed a stress response because we don't have control, right? But so now that we kind of know what stress is, it's kind of important to understand what does stress look like, right? I think this is important because a lot of times as people of color, like even when we undergo stress, one of the things that we think about is that we could just tough through it, we could just work through it, whatever the case may be, we can just manage it, right? But sometimes we don't understand that we're under stress, right? Aches and pains. So I think this is kind of interesting, though, right? Because a lot of times when you work with different other groups of people, when we talk about stress or depression or whatever, we think about somebody being morose or moping around or super sad. But with people of color, sometimes that stress manifests itself as aches and pains. My knee hurt, my back hurts. I'm just tired all of a sudden, right? So it doesn't necessarily look like what you expect for depression or stress or anxiousness to look like, but it's still manifesting itself, right? Chest pains, it feels like your heart is racing, right? Exhaustion or trouble sleeping, right? This is like two ends of the spectrum, but I think it's kind of important though, right? Because sometimes when you have trouble sleeping, it's because you have this worry, but it's not something that's psychological as much as it is something that's physiological. What do I mean by that, right? So one of the things about the body is like when your body is under duress, like your body wants to be vigilant, right? Because it's thinking that it's a threat's going to come, something's going to happen, whatever the case may be, though, right? But when we think about in modern times and we think about what does stress look like and the body becomes vigilant, what ends up happening is that we struggle with sleep, right? And when we struggle with sleep, it doesn't give our body an opportunity to reset, right? So in turn, what ends up happening is that we just become exhausted, right? You just go through the day and you have your daily routine, so it may not always be disruptive as long as you don't do anything new, but you just go through the day, you're lethargic, you're tired, it's hard to do different things. This is all a symptom of stress, right? Because what it ends up happening is that it creates weathering or all aesthetic load, or essentially what it does is that it breaks your body down. Imagine having a car and you're driving from New York to California, right? And you keep going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth without a break. What's going to happen to that car? It could be a brand new car. What's going to happen to it? It's going to break down. It's the same concept with the body. It's going to break down, right? So this is why sleeping and exhaustion is so troubling in terms of stress. Headaches, high blood pressure, diabetes, trouble having sex, weak immune system. So one of the things about stress is that it's immunosuppressant, right? So when you have something that's immunosuppressant, that means that your body can't fight diseases and fight different disorders and stuff, and it allows everything to accumulate. This is why you see individuals who undergo so much stress have a higher rate of cancers, of diseases, of different things of the sort, right? Everything just kind of comes back to stress.
Mm.
Right? So, one of the things I want you guys to kind of think about, just from a physiological standpoint with stress, is I want you guys to think about the caveman days, right? So, with the caveman days, let's say we spend all day fishing and we get the trout and we get whatever the case may be, and it's starting to become dark. So, we're walking back towards camp. So when we're walking back towards camp, we become vigilant, right? Because you're worried, is a saber-toothed tiger or a bear or whatever the case may be, is it going to jump out the bushes and attack us? We become vigilant, right? Your body's saying like, hey, instead of processing the sugar, we want to become insulin resistant because we want to have the sugar ready just in case we have to like run or fight or flight. And your body becomes hypertensive because your body's saying, hey, if the saber-toothed tiger bites us, we want to have these constricted blood vessels so we don't bleed out, right? So you fast forward today and you think about stress now, then you can understand why you had the diabetes, you had the high blood pressure, you had the trouble sleeping, because this is all physiological response to stress. And even though saber-toothed tiger might not jump out the bushes, your body's still prepping your body's still prepping itself just in the event that it has to do some sort of maneuvering. And this is why stress leads to some of these disorders. And your body also becomes immunosuppressant because your body's just thinking like, okay, this threat won't last a long time, so I don't have to spend time, energy, effort to get rid of cancers or Alzheimer's or whatever the case may be, because once this threat's over with, we can resume things back to normal. But if you're always under stress and never stop, then your body becomes immunosuppressant, which allows these things to develop. Does this make sense? Because I knew I just threw a lot of information at you guys, but one of the biggest things, that the common denominator that I want you guys to get, is that stress makes the body sick. The body
Mm.
can't fight with stress. That's what I want you guys to understand. Does that make sense? All right. But also, stress can lead to emotional and mental symptoms like anxiety, which we kind of discussed, right? Because if you're always vigilant, because if your body's thinking, like, hey, you know what, there may be a threat or whatever the case, so I have to be very vigilant, it kind of leads to anxiety, right? Like even if there is no like physical threat or like some natural threat, but just because you're under stress, your body just becomes very vigilant, and it just leads to anxiety. And this is why you can't sleep at night when you're thinking about something that has to be done, or you're thinking about something that's in the future, or whatever. That is the foundation to a certain extent of anxiety. Right. So I think, and I give you this information because I think it's important to know that not to just talk about stress in a vacuum, but to be mindful of the symptoms that create stress. Okay. Depression, right? So one of the things about stress that it does is that it turns off the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex of the brain, right? So when I say the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, essentially that's how we make decisions, that's how we think, problem solve, plan, whatever the case. But underneath the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, you have the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. So with the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, that does poorly at managing like emotions and everything of the source. But under stress, the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex becomes activated. And what ends up happening with that is that it's harder to manage psychopathology. So it's easier to become depressed. Panic attacks, sadness, right? These are all residual impacts of stress. But it's important to be able to be mindful to recognize what these items look like. Are there any questions? Because I knew I threw a lot of information at you guys, but I do think it's important.
You raised a very important point about stress and how that impacts our health. And we don't talk about it a lot. And I made a note in the chat as my takeaway is that stress make the body sick, and especially when it comes to chronic stress. Can you
Right.
um, determine between just having I'm walking across the street and a car comes too close to me, okay, versus is that I'm in a stressful relation, well, not, I won't say stress, I'm in a challenging relationship, and
Right.
my emotions are going off all the time, and I'm upset, I'm crying, or I am at a job that I just do not like, and I every time my supervisor comes by my desk or asks me for something, my stomach is in a knot. So can you distinguish between that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, stress in of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, stress is what keeps us alive, right? I mean, stress to a certain extent is like why we prepare for a test. We get anxious, so we start becoming vigilant, so we start studying. But once that stress is over with, we can relax and your body goes back to
Hmm.
normal, everything of the sort, right? But what ends up happening with chronic stress is that there is no break. Right. So, and that's what makes it so dangerous because now you have this hypertension, now you have this diabetes and stuff, now you have this immunosuppression, but also what you notice, particularly in people of color, is that you see this excessive weight gain. And the reason why you have this weight gain is because there's this influx of cortisol in the body. And I think I talk about it a little bit later in a different slide, but cortisol is one of the things that makes people gain weight. But you also have to remember cortisol does several things. The first off, cortisol is like a steroid, right? So you always hear about the baseball players or sports players using steroids and stuff. And one of the things they do is that they get bigger, right? That's what cortisol does. This partially explains erectile dysfunction, but also explains like different memory problems, right? Because when there's an influx of cortisol, it shrinks the hippocampus, and when the hippocampus atrophies, the hippocampus is in charge of your memories. So it's almost like you create an Alzheimer's that wouldn't normally exist, largely because your hippocampus is atrophying, like it's getting smaller and stuff like that. So I think those are things to be mindful. But also one of the things that to be mindful of, I get tongue tied. Another thing to be mindful about is that when you're stressed and you use cortisol, cortisol is a cholesterol, right? So this is why when people are under a lot of stress, they don't want like the carrots or the celery or a glass of water and stuff. They want the fried foods or whatever because your body is trying to replenish something that is lost. And I think this is what's important. But we also see stress manifest itself differently, right? When people say, well, there's no racial differences or whatever, but we kind of see it, right? Like when you start seeing African American women with a higher rate of PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome and stuff, that's a residual impact of stress. A great extent of it is, right? Because what ends up happening is that you have estrogen and you have progesterone. So when you're using a lot of cortisol, what ends up happening is that you have more progesterone being used to help create the cortisol, and then you have this influx of estrogen, and next thing you know, it makes the ovaries go wayward, and it can also lead to triple negative breast cancer, which is a little bit more aggressive, happens younger, and is more often had in like women of color. So we see that stress manifests itself differently, but it's about pinpointing what is the genesis of the stress and that I am undergoing a stressful situation. So if I recognize that, hey, these things are happening, now I now have more leverage to do something better about it. But yeah, chronic stress is the killer. Chronic stress, particularly amongst African Americans, is more so what leads to the development of Alzheimer's. Because it's important to be mind or to understand that African Americans, we have a higher rate of mixed pathology in terms of Alzheimer's. In other words, what ends up happening is that it's not just your traditional Alzheimer's, but it's your Alzheimer's, it's your vascular dementia, it's just different varying forms of dementia. Whereas with the white counterparts, it's about 50% mixed dementia, 50% of just a single dementia, usually just Alzheimer's. So stress wreaks havoc on our body, but one of our problems is that we have this notion that, well, I could just work through it, it won't be a problem, anything of the sort. Take one step further though, right? So I got my fingers crossed and I'm hoping we could get this research published. But I was working with Rush Alzheimer's University and Rush, or I just butchered the name, but I was working with Rush in their Alzheimer's department. And we're working on this research project, and essentially it's called John Henryism, African Americans and Cognitive Performance. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with John Henryism, but with John Henryism, it's this ideology that no matter what the task is in front of me, if I work hard enough, I can accomplish it. Kind of like the fable of John Henry, and he beat the mechanic or the train, whatever. So we're taking this ideology, and what we found is that individuals who ascribe to this John Henry principle that no matter how challenging something is, no matter how hard something is, if they can overcome it, that it is aligned with poor cognitive functioning, more health concerns. But when we stratify the data between men and women, it is women who are most susceptible to the effects of John Henryism, right? So when we start thinking about women, it's being an African American, it's being a woman, and it's being an African American woman. So it's like an amalgamation of these things, which really lead to health detriments. And I know we're talking about like men's health during June, but I just want to get that little tidbit in there also.
Uh, since you mentioned that, is that where the superwoman comes in?
Yeah, well,
The
you know what?
black superwoman
That's
arrive?
part of it. I mean, because it
And
all goes back to this allostatic load, right? So, kind of like what Shakespeare said, "Rose by any other name does not smell just as sweet." So, if we're talking about weathering, allostatic load, John Henryism, Superwoman, and stuff, it kind of falls on the same umbrella of not being able to disabuse stressors, right? It's about
mm,
having these stressors, right? And not being able to do anything about it. And as a result, having more health ailments than other groups of people.
that's interesting. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. All right, stress in the brain. So, what is stressors amongst African American men? So, this is one of the things I really want to do with this presentation is that I want to challenge the notion of what we think, right? Because it's easy to use superlatives and just rest on laurels of like, yeah, okay, yeah, I know what stress is, but it's a little bit more to say, okay, what does this look like in the everyday? So when we talk about what is stressors amongst African American men, stress due to psychosocial factors, right? So we talk about this. We've seen this in the civil rights movement when you have men walking around with the signs that says "I am a man" or "I want civil rights," or we think about the history of lynching, right? So it's not just this one moment in time, but it's like spanning the lifespan. It's like spanning the history, and every iteration of Black manhood, you see some significant stressor, right? You see Trayvon Martin, you see George Floyd, you deal with being the only African American at work and stuff, and people treat you poorly, and you come back home into like underserved community, your family's depending on you, different other things. Like these are all psychosocial stressors that can impact stress and ultimately the brain. Finances, right? How do I provide? How do I make a way? Right? Racism, right? These are all specific things that lead to stress and that ultimately impact the brain. Right? What are ways that stress impacts the brain? So, impairs memory. And I mentioned this a little bit before, and I'm going to talk about these a little bit more also. But impairs memory. When it shrinks the hippocampi because you have the cortisol, like that makes it harder to learn. But also, your frontal lobe, right? So your frontal lobe kind of deals with your working memory. So when you think about memory, a lot of times people think about it's just memory, but really memory is kind of segmented, right? So you have like your working memory. So your working memory is like if I give you my phone number, then you're able to store that information for like 7 to 10 seconds, give or take a couple seconds, stuff, right? Then next thing you know, you have to like store. It's a process of storing it. And next thing you have like recall and recognition, everything of the sort. So what ends up happening is that if information doesn't get in clearly, then it's harder to recall information at a later point, right? So just imagine that I'm really excited about something and I run and I tell you something really quickly and you really don't know what I was talking about, but you kind of get the gist of it. Then somebody asks you about it like maybe an hour later. And it's like, well, I know he said something to me, but I really didn't process it. That's memory, right? That's the frontal part of memory was that it's hard just to get the information just in, right? So when we talk about stress, every part of the brain that is affected by that leads to memory in any varying form in any varying function that it's impacted by stress, right? It changes the brain structure, which we kind of talked about, more susceptible to mental illness and psychopathology. So this is kind of interesting also though, right? Because we kind of understand how the brain shifts with under stressor, but what we also recognize is that individuals with some varying form of heart disease, cardiovascular disease, that the heart and the brain are related for better or worse, right? So if you're having heart ailments, that's what's going to end up happening. You're going to have brain ailments, and individuals that have a higher level of depression usually have some varying form of heart disease, right? And stress shrinks the brain. So I think we kind of mentioned that a little bit before, but I think it's kind of interesting though, just to bring up again because I think it's a point worth emphasizing. All right. So again, I know I threw a lot of information at you guys. Please ask me questions because this is what I'm here for.
I have a question, doctor.
Yes.
Yes, most people, I'm assuming, I'm just saying what I'm thinking, they don't even know that they're stressed. They think when they become ill or have some kind of health issue, they think it might have been something that they ate or something that they didn't do. But most of them don't know that it's stress that's causing it. Would you agree with that?
Yes. I mean, and I think you raise an interesting point, right? Um, so what's kind of interesting is that you are what you eat, right? Because like in your stomach, you create serotonin and stuff. And serotonin is like a feel good hormone and different things and stuff. So when you eat something that doesn't necessarily agree with you, it can change your mood. It can change the way that you feel or whatever. Because you have the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve is like the only cranial nerve that stems from your brain and goes all the way down to your stomach, right? So if you have an upset stomach, you got the bacteria, you got the biome, you got like a little biome in your stomach. So if that's disrupted, then that can change the way that you feel, right? So you ever think about sometimes with comfort food when people like they eat to feel better and stuff? Well, yeah, that happens, but you also got to think about the vagus nerve. Um, did I answer your question? Because I feel like
Yes,
there's
yeah, because I know that that happens because I mean, I've had illnesses and I'll go to emergency and I'm in there with heart and all of that. And then they send me back home and say, talk to your primary doctor. And really, and some of it I said, it's probably anxiety or stress. I'm like, because I mean, I didn't eat anything to make that happen. So it's got to be something else planned on me. And I'm not aware of it. And that can really happen. A lot of times you have no clue because you feel okay, you're looking good and all of that. And then you say, what's going on with me? But a lot of people don't go to the stress. They say, "Oh, what did I eat today? What was my blood pressure?" They cause it on other things. And it's actually just natural stress that's causing a lot of that.
well, you know what, you raise an interesting point also because I think it's important, right? Because this is more of a step process. Even though we're using a shotgun approach, but this is more of a step process, though, right? It's about recognizing, saying, okay, I don't feel well, right? Did I eat something that may have upset my stomach? Okay, no. Well, what about work, right? When I think about work, my stomach feels squeezy. I can feel like that little angst develop in my chest. I get miserable. I'm down. I don't want to be around family. The more I think about work, the more I want to isolate myself, or I try to go around thinking about work because I know how stressful it is and stuff. Then you say, okay, well, you know what? Chances are I'm more stressed than anything. So, what measures can I take to reduce the stress? I think one of the biggest things is about identifying that stress exists. It's not just to say it like in a vacuum like stress, but it's understanding what factors contribute to stress and what does stress look like when it manifests itself in my body. And when we can do that, then we can take more appropriate measures. So, right? Because if I'm distressed and
Yeah.
say, hey, I don't feel good. Hey, let me go to Popeye's Chicken or whatever the case. Let me get this crazy chicken sandwich, or whatever the case. Then it's like we're not doing any favors because that stuff isn't good for us, even if it makes us feel good for the moment, right? Your body's trying to get more cholesterol to create more cortisol. And what ends up happening is that we get bigger. One of the things that you can tell when somebody's stressed, and I always try to tell people this also, is that like you see this weight gain, but it's hard to get rid of, right? Like you could do the diet, you could do the exercise, whatever the case, but it's hard to get rid of. And a lot of times that's the stress weight gain. And you see it in individuals in graduate school, you see it in individuals who travel a lot for work, right? Like those individuals tend to get bigger because it's stress. That's how you can tell if somebody's stressed.
Is that the weight that is around the waist, or does it appear all over the body equally?
Um, See, now I don't want to say the wrong thing because I really don't. I really don't know. Uh, I do know that African American women sometimes they tend to carry the weight a little bit differently, but also I know sometimes like when with women, when it's estrogen, now the word is eluding me, but estrogen dominant, I think it's called.
Mm.
They tend to gain weight more in the belly region and stuff. It just seems to accumulate a little bit differently.
Okay.
Um, so yeah.
Mm. So where does the men um, gain their stress? Because some of them are just as stressful as females. Do they
That's
carry their stress in another part of their body?
See, men are different though, right? And not different bad and stuff, but just kind of speaking from just men that I know and different things. Sometimes like men are really bad at stressors or at dealing with stress, and I'll tell you why. Is I was reading this interesting article, and I was just gonna say as men get older, we struggle to make friends, whereas women they tend to have better social relationships than men do.
I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
And what ends up happening is because we tend to internalize things, right? I'm mad, I'm angry, I have angst, whatever the case may be, then I might tend to drink my feelings away, or I might try to do something that's a little bit more daredevilish, or yeah, I would live a less healthy lifestyle compared to women my age, even under the same amount of stress, which in part is why um, we tend to die a little bit sooner than women because I think the average age of African American women is around 71, 72, where African American men is 68. But sometimes that's a hard 68 to get to because even though it may be 68, the quality of life may have been bad for the last 5 or 6 years, right? So it's really like 62. So
Okay.
so I'm just gonna say that to say is that sometimes men we deal with stress so differently in that I don't know if it's necessarily awakening per se, but it's more reflected in our lifestyles.
Mm, thank you.
All
Okay.
right. That's good information. All right.
Yeah, I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you guys, but I think it's really important. Stress and psychopathology. So psychopathology is just another way of just saying like mental health, right? So when you think about psychopathology, your major depressive disorders, dysthymic, anxiety, bipolar, borderline, that's all
Okay.
psychopathology. That's all that
All
is.
right.
So when we talk about psychopathology, although stress is ubiquitous, like everybody deals with it, but not everybody's built the same to deal with stress, right? So most people who experience stress do not develop psychiatric disorders, most people. But at the same time, and I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, it's important to be mindful is that sometimes like people of color, we don't exhume stress the same way that other people do. So we may be stressed, but we're not moping around or crying or mad or whatever the case may be, but we just internalize it a little bit differently.
Okay.
Excuse me.
God bless you.
Thank you. All right. So I think that's just something important to know, just to recognize, right? This is due in part to the severity and length of the stress exposure, with longer, more severe exposure being more likely to cause psychopathology, right? And we see it though, right? Because we always think about these grand examples, but sometimes we see it elsewhere too, right? We see it. Maybe this guy is just walking around talking to himself, and we see it, and we just say, "Oh, okay, this person is broken or whatever." But sometimes that's the thing about stress or life is that it'll break the spirit. I mean, we're talking about this from
Mhm.
just a spiritual standpoint. Like sometimes when that spirit's broken, it's hard to put together again. So you see people just walking around dead to the world because that spirit has been broken. That is part of stress, right? Another critical factor that determines whether people develop psychopathology following stress involves their level of vulnerability, right? So vulnerability is like what resources are readily available. Like even when you turn on the news and you see like these kids really acting up in Chicago and shootings in a downtown and a North Loop and everything of the sort, you start thinking about how is stress manifesting itself, right? Because if there was resources in the community, would they be as prone to acting out, right? This is how stress manifests itself in real time. Like a lot of times we look at stress as the end result, or we just say stress or whatever. But when we understand what does it look like to have a paucity of resources and how does that contribute to the development of stress? Well, here we go, right? I think in 2013, Rahm Emanuel closed down a number of mental health facilities in the south and the west side of the communities, and now it's manifesting itself 10 years later, right? Because there's no place for them to go. This is what we're talking about. levels of vulnerability, no grocery stores, poor school systems, no boys and girls club, no activities or anything of the sort. So people don't have anything to help them ameliorate their stress symptoms. So everything just compounds, and what ends up happening is that you just see poor stuff, right? So three types of stress have been found to increase risk for psychopathology.
Dr.
Uh,
Howard, can I
yes.
just interject one thing? I was in one community, I won't say. I was walking in the park. The park was open to 9 o'clock. And then there was a baseball game going on. Night lights, the commissary open, everybody cheering, laughing, beautiful grass scenery. And then when I came home and I was sharing it with my husband, I said, like, where is the where's that for us in our community that's safe to do like a night league or something and have family come out and have them cheer for you with their nice uniform and all the equipment that they need? Where is that for our community? Where is that in one community, in the African American community?
Right.
I don't know if there's any.
Well, and I don't want to delineate too much, but to answer your question, like there's been such a
I
divestment.
mean, I'm just making a reference
Oh no,
about
no,
how
no,
we can
no,
relieve the stress,
it's fine.
how there's outlets in other nationality of them relieving their stress, family stresses, going out for a family outing, even in the evening, and feeling safe, feeling comfortable, versus, we're sheltered in our home. But I do want to say that we're going to be needing to wrap up
Oh, okay.
a little bit. If you could do, um, I don't know how many slides you have left,
Oh, not
but
many, not many.
okay, all
All
right,
right, yeah,
in
yeah. I
transition.
think I went off
But
on a
that was
deep
just
end
a
a little
point
bit
I
too much.
wanted to make
No,
because it was
absolutely.
something recently that I saw.
Absolutely. I think it's been such a huge divestment in our community. Like, I mean, like just in the Black community has been such a divestment that we don't get those opportunities and stuff, and all that stuff is shifted to like different other sides of town and stuff. And what ends up, I mean, because we celebrate when we get a Whole Foods in our community, right? We should have two or three Whole Foods, right? I mean, if you think about Chicago, the south side of the city is like the largest side of the city, right? And almost one of the most populated, with almost 600, 700,000 people, not including like the African Americans of the west side of the city and stuff. But it's like one of the most underserved communities. So it has to be somebody that wants to invest in those communities and stuff and put those resources there, right? All the money is put in a different set of town. And as a result, it's reflected in health, it's reflected in education, it's reflected in every iteration of a person's being when there's a divestment in a community. So we kind of talked about how stress changes the brain structure. So I'm not going to delve too far into that. Um, but yeah, I mean, just the one thing I'll just say is that when people are under stress, like the dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex, where we like make all the decisions and do everything of the sort, that stops working. And the ventromedial prefrontal cortex is not designed to really work with decision making. That's more fight or flight type of thing. So what ends up happening is that people are more prone to violence because under stress, they're not thinking because the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex isn't working as well. It becomes hypoactive, whereas the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex becomes hyperactive. And that's why people are more prone to fighting and doing bad stuff, because it's a residual impact of stress. So when you start looking in certain communities, you start seeing like this influx of violence. You start seeing, and it's like, why would you do that? People are at a park and you want to start shooting, whatever the case may be. Like that's a big part of it, because stress makes people not make good decisions. And when it's under a lot of stress, that just kind of increases. But the other psychological component is that if you don't have anybody positive to model good behavior off of, then you don't know any better. There is a study in psychology where these kids were just watching somebody beat up a clown, like it was a toy clown or whatever, and they put the same clown in the room, and without any instructions, whatever the case, the kids start beating up that toy clown. Point being is that a lot of times people model behavior, but also when there's a lot of stress, people don't make good decisions, and that put together leads to a lot of bad behavior under stress. Stress and dementia. During oxidative stress, excess free radicals can damage structures inside brain cells and even cause cell death, which may lead to the risk of Parkinson's disease. Oxidative stress also alters essential proteins such as the amyloid beta peptides. So we kind of talked about immunosuppression. So essentially all what this is saying, right? So what gives African Americans like Alzheimer's is different than what gives whites Alzheimer's, because the gene that gives whites Alzheimer's, like we kind of developed like a natural cure to it, because basically because we come from a tropical environment, like us fighting malaria kind of create a predisposition to being able to fight like Alzheimer's from their gene set. Our gene set is a little bit different. Our gene set is ABCA7, which is phagocytosis. So essentially what it does is that gene eats up all the gunk and all the nasty stuff, the amyloid plaques, the beta protein, all the stuff, the neurofibrillary tangles, like it clears all that stuff out though, right? But when the body's immunosuppressant, then that gene can't work, right? So what ends up happening is that you see this amalgamation of bad things developing in the brain. This is why African Americans, we develop Alzheimer's or a dementia, I keep saying Alzheimer's, but we develop a dementia at a rate 2 to 4 times higher than white individuals, right? Like this is why, because stress, because we don't have that gene that's cleaning things out, because we're always in immunosuppression. Like that's that's almost like, so if we can find a way to manage stress, then perhaps we can find a manage a way to deal with dementia, right? Where we don't have to take a whole bunch of medications, we don't have to have, go to the doctor a whole bunch. We could just have a lifestyle change and we can eradicate dementia if we learn how to manage stress, right? So I think that's just kind of interesting. That's something that's not discussed nearly enough, because most of the Alzheimer's trials, dementia trials, is geared towards white individuals. So even if they do find a cure for that, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to like be for us. So lifestyle change is very important. Eating
Yeah.
nutrition,
Yes, they are.
exercise,
Yes.
everything of the sort, because I know we're pressed for time. All right, so the best way to manage stress is to eat and drink to optimize your health, right? So how many times when people are stressed, do they start stress drinking, right? When they start drinking alcohol and they start eating bad food and stuff, it feels good for the moment, but the residual impact is that if we're already diabetic and have hypertension, that it just increases the probability. Just an interesting statistic that African American men over the age of 20, 44% has some varying form of cardiovascular disease. African American women over the age of 20, 48% has some varying form of cardiovascular disease. So if we understand the way that stress impacts the diabetes, the hypertension, becoming insulin resistant, how it affects the brain and stuff, this is no surprise. This should come off as no surprise to us. So this is something to be mindful of. Exercising regularly, right? So as we get older, it becomes harder to exercise. Plus, there's a paucity of gyms in our community. But what's important is walking, right? Walking is probably one of the most efficient ways to get better. And granted, like if you're in St. Louis or Chicago or Rust Belt City, that, the winters can be pretty brutal sometimes. And that's okay, right? You could do stretches and exercises at home by looking at different videos on YouTube. Describing the different gym workout plans and everything of the sort, right? So there's a way to do something. But the reason why walking is so important, not only is it like low stress on your joints, but if you walk with another individual, that it can also be therapeutic. So you're getting health both ways. One, you're getting health just from the walking and stuff, but you're also getting therapy for your mind, where you're able to talk with your friend about what's going on in your life, how you doing, how you feeling, or you can even play games and say, hey, what color are the flowers over there? What car just passed? Whatever the case may be, exercising is very, 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 very important, right? Because even if we pass away at 68, we want to be at a good 68. We don't want to struggle to make it to that 68. Stop using tobacco and nicotine products. Study and practice relaxation techniques, right? This is why prayer is so important, though, right? Because you have to stop everything in your day so you can focus on the conversation with God, right? So this is important, where we learn how to be in the moment, not worrying about the past, depression, not worrying about the future, anxiety, but staying in the moment and mastering the moment, right? Okay, reduce triggers of stress. So recognizing that you have stress and understanding what is the genesis of the stress, right? Because there's some things that you'll never be able to get rid of. You might not be able to change your neighborhood, you might not be able to change your bills, but if you accept that I live in this neighborhood or these are the bills that I have, it may be a little bit better because you're not focused on something that you can't control.
All right, doctor. I know that you're
Okay.
trying to I know you're trying to wrap up, but I would love to have a copy of this, the best ways to
Absolutely.
manage stress. So if you can provide that for us, and we would really appreciate it. And I'm just love you today. This is just so much information, but it's really good.
Absolutely.
And we really needed to hear it. So we really do appreciate what you're doing today. Yes, we do.
Feel
Yes.
free
Very
to
informative.
email me questions that anybody may have, and I'll answer them.
All right, doctor.
Absolutely. Have a great
All right.
day.
God
Thank
bless.
you, Dr.
And you
Howard.
take
Thank
care.
you.
So much.
All right. That was very, very good, very informative. Let me go ahead and bring up our presentation again. I'm glad you all enjoyed that. It was very good.
It was very good. Yeah.
Maybe we can circle back again another time. Okay, well, we're gonna go ahead and move on to our next section of our presentation. So we're gonna go forward with the recipes. I do first want to acknowledge, we did mention that we're at a new location today. The location is Iman Fresh Market, and this is on 63rd Street. I'll give you all the exact address information. This is a Go Green Market. So we just want to thank the owners for allowing us to use that space. It's a Go Green Community Fresh Market. So it's on 1207 West 63rd Street in Chicago. So they sell various market materials, groceries and things like that. So this is a good place to shop when you want to get your natural health products and just different food items and whatnot. So, okay, we want to acknowledge Iman Fresh Market on 63rd in Chicago. So our recipe for today, we're doing turkey burgers as well as Waldorf salad and roasted vegetable couscous salad. So we have the chefs Karen Crawford Moore and William London back with us again today. Let's see, are we ready, Chef Karen? And yes, I see the chat. I'm gonna go ahead and add the address there. Okay, Chef Karen, you ready? Good. If you can go ahead and just give us a quick introduction, and then we can pin you and get started with the cooking. Okay, Chef
Great.
Karen.
Thank you, Sharia Moore. Again, I'm Chef Karen Crawford Moore, and it's a pleasure to be back with you again today in Inglewood at the Iman Fresh Store. So I have my own personal chef service, TLC Personal Chefing. I've been in food service for over 20 years. I've worked in restaurants, catering companies, meal prep companies, food demoing, meat processing. So I've been in various arenas of food service. So that's my story, and I'll introduce Chef London in a moment. First, I'm going to prepare one of our salads, which is a couscous salad. So this is actually a blend. So this is couscous, quinoa, and millet, with also with a little bit of corn in it. So, and let me mention that 90% of our ingredients that we use today were purchased right here at Iman's Fresh Market. So this is one of the items, and this is actually a prepared product. So it's microwavable, and you're supposed to microwave it for 90 seconds. That would be horrible. And then you're good to go. But since this is a cold salad, I don't even have to do that. So thanks, Iman Market, for the easy prep on my quinoa. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to put that in my bowl here. And I'm going to break that up just a little bit. I'm gonna add my other ingredients. So I have some finely diced red bell pepper, some finely diced red onion, chopped cilantro, and chopped garlic. So those are my main ingredients. Then I'm going to move on to my dressing. So, and it's so easy to make your own dressing. Like literally, this takes less than 2 minutes. So here I have 2 limes, the juice of 2 limes, and the zest of 1 lime. I'm going to just add a little pinch of salt, some pepper, and I'm going to stir it around. I'm not sure the whisk will work in here. And then I like to dissolve my salt in my, whatever my acid is. It breaks down a little faster before adding the oil. So I'm gonna add my oil now.
Chef, what kind of oil are you adding?
This is
What
olive
kind of oil? Olive oil?
Olive oil, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna pour that over. So everything is nice, fresh ingredients. I'm just gonna stir this around. So you got these nice pops of color in here from the red bell pepper, the cilantro, even the corn. And then I do recommend chilling this before serving it. But you know, for the purposes of this class, time won't permit. But even if you chilled it for, say, maybe an hour before you served it, that would make it even more refreshing. So this would be great with all kinds of grilled sides and so forth. So that is our couscous salad. So now I'm going to turn things over to my co-chef. Man has been cooking since birth, almost half a century of cooking. Chef William London.
All right.
He has worked everywhere. He's worked on cruise ships. He's worked, he's cooked for generals and colonels. He's, and when I'm lucky, he cooks for me, so.
That's wonderful.
Toss it over to Chef London, and he's gonna go through the turkey burger.
Hello, 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 everybody. So elated to be back.
Hi.
So before I get into the turkey burger, I want to share an experience of mine where, because of my health, I came very close to death. I was doing my annual checkup. My blood pressure was 210 over 100. That's extremely high. And it was because of my diet. Eating a lot of high sodium foods. I wasn't reading my nutritional facts. And that's what really gets us is reading the nutritional facts, because everything that I enjoy and my family enjoy is very high in sodium. Steak sauce, ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, ranch dressing. If you read the nutritional facts on the side, loaded with sodium. So I had to take sodium out. So in this hamburger dish we're making today, we replaced the salt with dash. So this is salt substitute, and it has 0 sodium, okay? And that's what we're working with today. There's 1,000 different ways to make a turkey burger. The first thing I want to express is it has to be cooked well done. There's no such thing as a medium rare turkey burger, okay? Ground turkey meat doesn't have a lot of fat, and that's where the flavor is. That's what makes cooking so challenging, because the fat is where the flavor is. Sugar, butter, heavy cream, Haagen-Dazs, butter pecan ice cream. Okay, these things have a lot of flavor. So when we eat it healthy, we have to change the dynamics of our ingredients to a healthier direction. So with the turkey burger, you can bake it in the oven, you can cook it in the saute pan. When I make them at home, I put them on a grill, because when I found out when you grill things, it gives it a more added flavor. So today with our turkey burger, we have really good ingredients. So I always like to incorporate vegetables into my meat, because the vegetables do 2 things. They give it flavor, and the juices from the vegetable, as it cooks, becomes more moist. So in our turkey burgers, we have fresh garlic, and garlic to me is a superfood. I can remember when I was a little boy, my great grandmother, when I was 6, she would take garlic and chop it up and give it to me. It was like cold medicine, and I would be well in a day or 2. So we have garlic in there, we have onions, we have red pepper, we have fresh sage. So we know sage and turkey goes together. If you think about Thanksgiving, what's the main ingredient in your dressing? Sage. And you know, with turkey burgers, you can get fancy. You can put on ketchup and mustard, or you know, you can get fancy. Sometime I'll take Miracle Whip and Grey Poupon mustard and cranberry sauce, and mix those 3 ingredients together and make like a cranberry mayo to get that cranberry contrast to the turkey burger. So we have the turkey burger right here, already portioned out to 4 ounces. And so as I put the turkey, can you hand me that towel, please? As I put the burger on, for these burgers, there's 4 ounces. I normally like to cook them for 8 to 10 minutes. And I put them on, and I flip them like every 3 minutes. And with turkey, if you're not sure, you know, you have to touch it. So if I touch this meat right now, it's very soft. So that means it's rare, medium rare. So if I look at the palm of my hand, if you take your finger and you push it in like this, that's uncooked meat. It's soft, it's mushy, it's going all the way in. So a well-done burger should be nice and firm. Chef, can you have me a well-done burger, please? So to the touch, because a lot of people always ask the question, well, how long should I cook it? How do I know when it's done? So when it's done, and you touch it, it's very firm, opposed to very mushy. So this is a cook well done. This is one that's cooking. So we're gonna let this go for a while. We're gonna put it on a nice grilled bun. We have condiments for it here, lettuce, tomato, and onion. It's gonna be our condiments today, along with the 2 salads that the chef is making. I'm gonna turn it back over to Chef King.
Thank you, Chef London. So I'm going to go right back to my couscous salad for like 30 seconds. So I also have roasted chopped cauliflower and chopped Brussels sprouts. So I like halve them or quarter them. But you can see here the roasted cauliflower, and it has a lovely little char around it, especially the cauliflower. So I tossed that with sea salt, black pepper, and garlic with a little drizzle of olive oil, tossed it, spread it out on a sheet pan, roasted it at 400 degrees for about 18 minutes, but that was in this wonderful convection commercial oven. So probably in a conventional oven, I would go 425 and probably a little longer, more like 25. So this is a Waldorf salad, and this has kind of morphed over the years. I use a mix of apples. So I have in my bowl here Granny Smith apples to give it more of a tartness. It's less sweet. So those of us who are conscious about our sugar intake, it's going to have a lower, it has a lower glycemic index than, say, Honeycrisp. That's why everybody likes Honeycrisp, because it's full of sugar. And then I have one Fuji apple, which is adds a little bit more, sweetness than the Granny Smith. So a mix of the two, but it's 2 to 1. So I'm gonna toss these in here, my bowl. And I soak this in water with lemon juice. And if anybody wants to shout out and let me know why I use lemon juice in the water, I've said this a couple of times in these sessions, but there's a reason you want to add lemon juice to your water when you're soaking your apples. Nothing, huh?
So the apple don't turn brown.
Thank you. Ding, 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 ding. I have one good student. Well, he's more like a teacher than a student for me. So here's my apples. Then I have some finely chopped celery. That's pretty traditional. These are raw walnuts. We know that has the wonderful omega-3 fatty acids, which are good for us. And usually they put in grapes, which again, another high glycemic fruit. So I swapped out for grapes, blueberries, which is a cancer fighter. Very good for you. All the berries are good for you. But I thought these would work great because they don't add a whole lot of liquid to the mix. So I'm going to make my dressing. So in my bowl, I have some agave nectar, raw agave nectar, raw organic agave in the raw. And to that, I'm going to add a little bit of lemon juice. And then I'm going to add yogurt. And this is actually a plant-based yogurt. This is Cake Hill. This is an almond milk yogurt that I'm going to add. And it's actually horrible here. I love the combination of fruit and yogurt together. So, traditionally, the dressing would be probably mayonnaise and sour cream and some sugar. So a little bit of a revision to make it more health conscious. And then I'm going to pour that over my salad. And you could also add dried fruit if you wanted, raisins, craisins, dried cherries, dried blueberries, any of those.
That looks really good, Chef. It really does. Looks really good.
Thank you. And again, this would be even better if it had an opportunity to chill for a little bit, chill for an hour or so. So those are our salads. So before we plate, I'm gonna toss. Okay, I'm gonna toss it back to Chef London. We're gonna check on these, check on his burger.
Okay, before we get back to the burger, we can take a look. We flipped it, and our time is 10 to 12 minutes. It's getting nice and crusty. But I want to talk about high blood pressure and foods. I'm old school, so I'm from the encyclopedia era. We had to go to grandma's house and pull a BBC to find something. We have Google now. You can get anything in 2 seconds. So for foods that I incorporate in my diet every week is foods with low cholesterol, and foods with low sodium. So you can go to Google on your phone and computer, and you can Google foods low in sodium. It's going to pop up like 20 things. It's garlic, it's beets, it's strawberries, it's blueberries, it's peppers, it's pomegranate juice, it's chicken loin, it's chicken breast, skinless. So it's like 20 foods. These are the best 20 foods to eat to lower your blood pressure. Bananas. And so I incorporate these in my diet every week to keep my blood pressure down. And so I replace salt with dash. And this comes in 4 different flavors. 0 sodium. So as we get older, our blood pressure naturally goes up with age. So we have to kind of like monitor it and maintain it properly. So we're gonna plate up our burger right now. So we want to toss our bun, toast it, nice and golden brown in a little olive oil. Okay. Now, sometimes if you're not sure if your burger is done or not, you can crack it open, put it in the microwave for 2 minutes. Okay. So we have a little green leaf lettuce. You know, we always have to make our plate very colorful. We have a turkey burger. We have a nice piece of tomato. A nice piece of red onion.
Chef, I think with hamburgers, I think the red onions is always gives it a better taste to me. Do you agree with that? Instead of just the regular, you know,
I do agree with that.
Yes, it's very good that way.
Sometimes for a burger, I would like to grill it also.
Yeah.
So that is our turkey burger for today.
All right.
Nice, simple, easy.
And you bring that plate back, and I'm gonna add to your plate on the other side here.
Chef's gonna add the salads to the plate.
So I'm using this lettuce leaf to kind of cup my apple salad, my apple Waldorf, because it's a little juicy. So to kind of capture those liquids so it doesn't run all over the plate.
Mm-hmm.
Chunk of red apple there. And then I'm gonna add my couscous salad, wonderful roasted vegetables. Wow, lots of color.
You gotta have color.
Beautiful.
The Japanese say you should eat lots of color. Like the more colors you're eating, you know, that's a sign of a good variety of nutrients and vitamins and all that good stuff. So,
60% of eating is eye appeal. Psychologically, it looks good, tastes good.
Beautiful.
Psychologically, if you go to a restaurant and you see a plate, you be like, ooh, not gonna taste good.
Thank you, chefs. Beautiful. Thank you, chefs. I gotta find out where you are so I can come and have a taste of that. This is Miss Minnie's.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That's very good. Can you
All
hold the plate up, Karen?
63rd Street.
Can you hold the plate up one
Karen?
more time? Can you hold the plate up, Karen? Okay, there we go.
Beautiful.
So I see the
Thank
hors d'oeuvre
you.
salad. I see everything. It looks wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
So we did turkey burgers, and then we had a roasted vegetable couscous salad, and then a Waldorf salad. Here's just a snapshot of the ingredients and directions. This you will get in your email as well. And then we also are now including the nutrition facts as requested. So these were our meals for today. So like I say, you'll get that in your email, just running through to give you a snapshot of the ingredients and the directions. But look forward to that in your inbox. Okay, well, thank you all so much for joining us today. We're going to have Shirley to give us a quick mealtime discussion. This will be very quick. We're just going to go through brief. We're going to go through a few of the ingredients and just tell you what some of the health benefits are. Okay, Shirley?
All right. Well, I'll cut my script down. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Mealtime Discussion, Foods That Heal. It is my pleasure to be here today, and we appreciate you taking some of your time to join us. I'm Shirley Mims, serving with gladness as the Community Relations and Special Projects Director for Advocates for Community Wellness. So today is today for a good day, and we're talking about June is Men's Health Awareness Month. So I'm just going to get started. I have chosen 3 ingredients from each one of the recipes that were done today. And so I'm going to start out the ingredients that's going to come to the table. First is one of my favorites is ground turkey, which he made that turkey burger. Now I love ground turkey because there's a lot of things that you can do with that. You can do a burger, you can do pizza, you can do pasta, you can do tacos, lasagna, and any other spicy recipe. So as far as brain health is what one of the focuses that we're doing today. By eating poultry products like turkey at least twice a week as part of the MIND diet, older adults may preserve their memory and thinking skills. They may preserve them, okay? And turkey is healthy, white meat overall, but remember all meats do contain a certain amount of fat. 1 3-ounce serving of turkey contains 1 gram of saturated fat, and that's 6% of your recommended daily intake. So briefly, that is what I'm going to say about that one because I don't have a lot of time. But I want to say this, using ground turkey meat is a wonderful decision to enjoy lots of health benefits. Sometimes it is much better than red meat. And you will be amazed to know that people have just started to eat turkey a half century ago. And many scientists already have proven how good it is to maintain your health department. All right. So now the next one was walnuts. This was in one of the recipes that they did. And the walnuts, as you can see here, she has some information on there. And walnuts they provide healthy fats, fiber, vitamins, and minerals. And that's just the beginning. All right. So as far as your brain health, it may be just a coincidence that the shell of a walnut sort of looks like a tiny brain. But researchers suggest that this nut may indeed be good for your mind. All right. So walnuts are something that we can add. You can add them, sprinkle them on a leafy green or fruit salad, which they did, finely chopped in dips and sauces, chopped and added to wraps or pita sandwiches, roasted, chopped, and used on pasta or vegetables, lightly browned in your favorite stir-fry recipe. So the bottom line, walnuts are exceptionally nutritional nuts. They have a higher antioxidant activity and significantly more healthy omega-3 fat, than any other common nut. All right, and finally, we have the Brussels sprouts. Now, Brussels sprouts, I don't know that much about. I don't really eat them that much, but I know they're good for you. And as far as brain, Brussels sprouts help deliver folate, which works with vitamin B12 found in fish, poultry, meat, and daily to help prevent coenzyme imperative. So the bottom line, Brussels sprouts are high in fiber, vitamins, minerals, and they're good with nutrition and added to your diet as far as nutritionists. They may come with added health benefits, including decrease inflammation and improve your immune system health. So adding Brussels sprouts to a balanced diet, rich in fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, has the potential to make a major positive impact on your health. And so there you have it. And I would like to say my hat's off to Chef Karen and Chef London. And I always close out with some encouraging words. And here are my words today for you from me. Get ready to be strong, be great, be amazing, be amazing. All right, back to our moderator, Cherie Amour. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Shirley. Very good. Thank you for the good information. Wrapped it up so smoothly and so well. Okay, so everyone, this is the end of the second event for our series. We'll be back next week for the third and final one for the month of June for Men's Health Awareness Month. Remember, we focus on recipes that tie into healing in terms of chronic disease and illness, and looking at how we can cure ourselves and heal ourselves through our diet and nutrition. And then, so the next one we'll look at cancer. We do have other programs that you may be interested in learning about. Please visit us online and on social medias. We have the Along the Journey Breast Cancer Survivorship Support Program, as well as we are launching a Well Woman Wellness Promotion Program. Information for both of those will be on the website. Please stay connected with us. Our phone number and email is listed. Our website is www.A4CW.org. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We have a fan page on Facebook as well as a group. The group is Eat Well Cooking Club for Better Health. Our pages are Advocates for Community Wellness on Facebook and Instagram. We do thank you once again for being with us, and we do want to end with our prayer, which comes from Numbers 6, verse 24 through 26, the NIV, and it says, "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace." So keep that in mind as you go throughout this week, and even in terms of thinking about your health. But we are officially done, and we do thank you for being with us today.